As I told you last time I presented, I've been working on the history of the railroads in North America and some of the different aspects. And obviously Chicago, the trains are running all over the place with other people's track on other people's tracks. But I looked at Minneapolis and St. Paul because of the two cities. It's fairly complicated here, and so I started to get into each one, how each of the railroads got from one city to the other. And so that'd be interesting to look at that. This is a map of the Twin City terminals. So here's the Sioux line. Here's the Northern Pacific. That's orange,
Yep.
and the NP came over here, and then the Great Northern is blue, and then the Milwaukee is red. And those are really the four railroads that own track. Everybody else ran on these railroads. And so what I'm going to try to do is go through the major railroads that had facilities in St. Paul first, go through each one, and then Minneapolis. Then we'll talk about the short lines, look at some specific key junctions that involve many railroads, and then the major bridges, and then we'll talk about today. By the way, this picture is in Minneapolis, 1983, when the Milwaukee was still going. This is a coal train going over to Wisconsin Energy from Montana, and it came right across on the South Dakota and through Minnesota and over to Wisconsin on the Milwaukee. So the major railroads, obviously on the east side, Burlington, Milwaukee, the NorthWestern, which of course is the Chicago, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Omaha, because the NorthWestern per se did not own any track in the Twin Cities. It was all the Omaha, and that was controlled by the NorthWestern from early on, and the Great Western and the Rock Island. Now, what I'm using, I did the same map for all the railroads, but I use the key is that red is passenger and black is freight. And if the railroad owns the track, it's a solid line. And if it's a dashed line, that means they're operating on trackage rights. So if we look at the Burlington, their passenger trains came in. You can see down at the left up through, and then they hit the where it says Spud. They hit the St. Paul Union Depot plant, and then they're on trackage rights of the St. Paul Union Depot. Then they go up the hill to Westminster. They go west across on the the Great Northern passenger main, and through the campus and across the Stone Arch Bridge to Minneapolis. And then of course they had a small coach yard. Right north of the Great Northern Depot in Minneapolis. Now the freight trains came in, and you see Dayton's Bluff down there in St. Paul. The freight trains came in there. Then from there on, they didn't run any trains west. They ran only transfer runs. And of course, the Burlington was owned by the Great Northern and the Northern Pacific, so they obviously transferred mostly to them. So the transfer runs would come up from Dayton's Bluff. They'd go up. They actually went up the NP most of the time. Sometimes they go up the Great Northern if they're going to the Union, but they go up the NP because it was a better grade. And you see the blob in the middle, where right above the word Saint, that was a small yard that the Burlington had at Park Junction. And then they went up to Northtown, and then they went over to Minneapolis Junction, and then west to Lyndale. So that was all done on trackage rates. And if you remember, it was interesting to see when they came into Hastings. Now the Milwaukee was built first, and they went up the west side of the Mississippi River. The Burlington was on the east side, and then right above the town of Hastings, there you can see the St. Croix Tower, and there the trains switched. Now the Milwaukee was on the east side, and the Burlington was on the west. Now the Milwaukee went straight across from Hastings over to St. Paul Park, but they had to go up and down a hill. Whereas when the Chicago, Burlington, and Northern, which was built later, they went around along the river and then had a much more gradual grade. Now, early on, the railroads figured out, gee, we're going to run this as double track. And then later on, it was CTC double track, bidirectional, because that was just better for both of them. Now, this is the St. Paul Union Depot. This is from the internet. So I'm taking pictures from the internet. I've got some from Greg Smith, from Bob Ball, Mike Cleary, some others, as well as slides of my own. But this shows Vista Domes on the Twin Cities Zephyr ready to head to Chicago. and it has one of those the Phase 2 power cars, which were from Electromotive Corporation. It has two EMC diesels in it, and then behind that is an E5. And then to the right, we can see an E7. And I think it's an interesting comparison. Can you imagine being an engineer in that power car going a 90 or 100 miles an hour down the track? I mean, even a bicycle pulling across the track would tend to scare you, because you're about 4 feet above the track and there's nothing in front of you. So obviously, the General Motors said, "Well, we got to build get the crew up and far behind, and then put big beams in the nose," and so that came out with the original EA, and then they continued that through the E7. I'm guessing that must be the Blackhawk, which they backed into the depot, and then they're going to head over to Minneapolis. Is that correct? Do you guys know on the right with the E units? I assume that's what it is. Anyway.
Yeah, it sounds logical. I was just wondering that, but that makes sense. Yeah.
Ross, according
And this is an earlier picture of the original Zephyr with the articulated cars. And as we've seen in history, the railroads flirt with the articulated trains every now and then. Then very soon they find out that the passenger loads are not flat. So they're busy times, and less busy times you need to be able to add cars or take cars off. Now, my dad was quite a photographer. Unfortunately, he wasn't really crazy about trains. It was my grandfather who got me into trains. My dad only took 2 pictures of trains, but this is one of them. So Greg has put this up on his Facebook page. But it's the original Pioneer Zephyr. I assume my dad was at the university in the 30s, so I assume he's walking across the Third Avenue Bridge, and he actually took a picture of the train. But kind of interesting to see the original Zephyr. Now, I took this about 35 years later at St. Paul Union Depot with the Zephyr coming in.
Ross,
This is from Greg's collection. It's a obviously 50s because it's got 5 domes, and it's the Twin Cities Zephyr heading out, and when the Zephyr was much bigger. Here it is later on. I took this in 1969. And it's coming under the Northern Pacific A line bridge over at St. Anthony Tower. But we're down to 1 E unit and 2 E unit, two domes by now. It was going fast. And this is 1970, 1 dome, and it actually has a blue, some kind of a blue car back there. This is at Newport Tower. Now, this picture I took at I think the Mounds Park, up above above Werner Road there, and this is about 68. So this would be they had two E units and three domes, so it's kind of in between. But you can see on the left, that's Dayton's Bluff Yard, which was Burlington, and then straight ahead is the Milwaukee facility, and that's the rip track and minor car repair right straight ahead, and then the engine terminals to the right, and then in back we see the yard, the big yard, new yard, which St. Paul Yard, Pig's Eye, which was built in 1957. As I said, the Burlington ran everything on with transfer runs, and this is at that same place I just showed you with the Zephyr. 3 of their TR2s, which are basically MW2s, and pulling a transfer run up from Dayton's Bluff, probably going to Union Yard, I would guess. That's the track he's on. And, do you raise the bridge or lower the river? Well, in this case, they lowered the river because they had to get tri-levels and high cubes underneath the bridge. So they took a couple of the freight tracks and dug them out. And so you can see they have that sag in the middle there. So the Burlington, because of all these transfer runs, they had 13 of these things here. Now, originally, they bought them as a cow-calf, TR2. But very soon they sent all the B units back to the calves, back to General Motors, and they put cabs on them. They wanted the flexibility because these things were running transfer runs all day because all the freight they brought into Minneapolis had to be taken by transfer run to the Great Northern, the NP, and the other railroads. Now, north of the Great Northern Depot in Minneapolis, they had a coach yard kind of squeezed in between the river and the Northern Pacific tracks. And I took this in probably about 68, 69. Looks kind of like probably wintertime. Okay, so let's talk about the Milwaukee now. Um, they came in, as I said, and they built first. They built up into St. Paul, and then they built down the down the. They had a track that went down the river, across, and down to Mendota, right in the bottom of the picture, and then that goes down to Austin, and then connects to Mason City, and that way. And they actually had passenger trains that came from Chicago that way. And then up to the left, you see it follows Hiawatha Avenue, where the blue line is now, and it that's where all the elevators are in the Minneapolis depot, and it went downtown Minneapolis. And so they did not build the short line till later, but they realized right away they needed a better route. Um, so they here it shows the short line is going from Spud right straight across there, and it goes up the hill, and there's Fordson Junction there, and that's that line that goes under the word Southtown. That's the Ford plant, and then it comes across, and then goes across the short line bridge, and you see it connects at Minnesota Transfer. And so the Minnesota Transfer basically went between the Milwaukee and the Great Northern. And then there's a line that goes up into the campus, and that's going up to 18th Avenue Southeast on the NP, and that was the East River Terrace Yard, or various names. But anyways, a small yard there they used to transfer with the Great Western and some of the other roads. And so they go over to Lake Street, is where those four lines cross in Minneapolis. And then they, of course, got to go to the depot downtown. And then the other big yard they had was in Bass Lake. So this is a picture of Lake Street, I'm guessing in probably about around the 50s. Now the line going straight across the top of the picture is Lake Street. And then right below that's Minneapolis Moline. And they picked that location because it's right next to the Milwaukee yard. They had really good access for cars coming in, tractors going out, and then the people in the neighborhood could walk to work or take the trolley. So it was a good, convenient location for them. And then you see Southtown Yard there, South Minneapolis, and then the full roundhouse. And then over to the left is where the off the left side of the picture is where the track goes to St. Paul, and the track's going off to the right. That's where they went to out west. And then down in the left-hand corner, that is down here is the Rock Island. Rock Island had a small yard there. They came in on trackage rates, but they had a yard, and then they had a freight terminal downtown too. Now this picture is from the internet. It shows the Milwaukee Depot, probably, I'm guessing, probably early 60s, because they had built the Towers Apartments here, and the train is yellow. Now the Milwaukee took over the city's trains for the UP in 1955, so that after that time they painted everything yellow. And this is Washington Avenue going underneath there. Yeah, you can see this thing. This is a viaduct, infamous viaduct that went over Washington Avenue. Originally, there were the streetcars went in the center section, and then the cars went on the right. Well, after they got buses, then you could drive through the center if you were brave enough. I know my mom would yell at my dad when he try to sneak through there because it was very easy to get into an accident. It was really narrow. And then my grandfather always talked about this. This is the 29th Street Depression, and you can see why. If you look at Minneapolis here, when the Milwaukee had a long freight, they're crossing like 40 grade crossings here. And so they literally shut the city down. So the city said, in the 20s, you guys got to do something about this because it's not working. And so my grandfather said first they dug holes for the bridges, and you also see some temporary bridges back here. And then they dug one track out, and then they dug the other track out. And so that was quite a project. He said it went on for a long time. Here's a picture. It's kind of fuzzy because it was from the newspaper when they finished it in the 30s. And this picture is from the internet. It's a local passenger train coming in from the west, right north of Lake Calhoun. And these are now apartments, condos. And I was over there visiting a woman I worked with, and she had a condo. It is the quietest place I've ever been. Of course, these walls are 8 inches thick. And the problem with it is they're hearing the drilling that's going on with the light rail, so they're complaining about it because it's so quiet in the apartment. Normal apartment, you probably wouldn't hear it, but so this is later on after they built the new bridge on Hennepin Avenue. I'm guessing this is probably late 70s, something like that. You can see the track is kind of getting down there. And Greg, I think this is from your collection, but it's a Twin Cities Western engine coming in because the TCW used to go in the at the end, probably in the 80s. They'd go down this way, and you can see the track is pretty bad. It's probably 5 mile an hour track. And then below that, we see the depression today. I took this picture over um, right at the Milwaukee yard in St. Paul, right by Dayton's Bluff, and it's right after they got the SD45s. When I was taking that picture, that aerial view sort of the Burlington Zephyr, I was standing right up here, just for reference. This was a below zero day. This is down at Newport, below zero day, and I tried to take a picture when the train was right here, but halfway between the pole and the Griswold signal, but the camera was slow, but I kept the picture anyway. This is from the internet. This is I assume it might be the Olympian High. I don't know. I can't. It almost looks like one of the big dome back there, but I don't know. They had those on the Hiawatha too. But anyway, this is one of the Hiawathas, and this is probably about 1960. And I took this one in 1970. You can see they're starting to build the Federal Reserve Bank, which they ran until they found asbestos all over the thing. So they tore the Great Northern Depot down and then moved over there, as you know. This is down at Newport. These are these MGP20 units. They sent old GP9s down to Milwaukee, and they just chopped the nose, and then they put in a 645 cubic inch normally aspirated engine, so they were 2,000 horsepower. But they didn't have a lot of money for new power, so they rebuilt the old power. This was at the St. Paul yard back in the late 60s, and this is coming out of the depot.